This is Julio Ricardo Varela talking with Governor Gary Johnson, who is the presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party for 2012. So Governor Johnson, for our listeners who don't know much about what it is to be a libertarian or what libertarianism is, do you mind just giving us sort of a basic overview of it, and so they know a little bit more about it?
Well, a basic overview. Libertarians are against military interventions. Libertarians are the peace candidates. Libertarians are the balanced budget candidates. Libertarians are the candidates that are against the growing police state in this country. So, speaking with a broad brushstroke, I think the majority of Americans are fiscally responsible, socially accepting. I think, speaking with a broad brushstroke, that's the Libertarian Party.
Great. I think one of your comments from your campaign had said fiscally conservative, socially cool. Would that be the right description for you?
It would be, and I use the notion of socially accepting as opposed to tolerance, because tolerance, I think, reflects, well, I don't agree with what your decisions are, but I go along with them.
Right.
Genuinely speaking, I think most of us really don't care. We really don't care how others live their lives, as long as when others live their lives, they don't put you or I in harm's way as a result of living that life.
Right. So why is there such a dissatisfaction with the two-party system in this country? What is everyone's talking about the system's broken. Why is it broken, and why do you think people are starting to look at other alternatives?
Well, why is it broken? At its core are politicians that are looking to get elected or reelected. That's why it's broken. The reward is election, reelection. I think we all recognize that we're in deep trouble. I think
right.
We all recognize that there needs to be this process of mutual sacrifice on all of our parts if we're going to save this country. So what's so disingenuous is you have the Democrats and the Republicans right now arguing over who's going to spend more money on Medicare. Well, we have to cut Medicare spending. Cut it. Not cut the growth, but actually cut Medicare. If we don't, we're going to find ourselves with no Medicare whatsoever. As a young person, I'm supposed to foot the bill for an entire generation that's retiring and is going to have health care. I'm going to never be able to retire. I'm never going to have health care, but I'm supposed to pay for this. I'm graduating from college with a home mortgage with no home. I've just got a big debt.
Right.
I'm supposed to get health insurance, the president's mandated health insurance. I'm part of the healthy group that's going to pay for those that aren't so healthy. If I were a young person right now, I would be so discontented over the sentence that I've been given, which is that I'm going to work the rest of my life to pay off debts that aren't mine.
Right. And what do you say then to those that would say that that type of argument seems not as compassionate or not as accepting, or saying that, what do you say to those critics?
Well, don't we really want to have a social safety net for those that are truly in need, whether they're poor or whether they're elderly? I am in that camp. I think we want to provide that safety net. But I'm going to argue that we've gone way over the line and that we all recognize this, and that what we're doing is simply not sustainable. What's going to be the result of continuing to borrow and spend 43 cents out of every dollar that we're spending? Borrow, print, spend. The ramifications are going to be a monetary collapse. And a monetary collapse, very simply, is when the dollars we have don't buy a thing because of the accompanying inflation that's going to go along with it. And so what that means is there will be no health care at all. There'll be no government programs of any kind. So how about this notion of mutual sacrifice on the part of all of us to have a system remain in place that we're able to offer compassion, but we cannot continue this unsustainable spending that's going on. I think the biggest threat to our national security is the fact that we're borrowing and printing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar we spend. Let's take spending levels when it comes to the military back to 2003, which would be a 43% reduction in military spending, not the end of the world, and let's focus on defense, strong defense of the United States, as opposed to offense and as opposed to nation building. And then add another one to kids taking it on the chin. Politicians are beating their chests over foreign terrorists. Well, that comes at a cost of men and servicewomen losing their lives. That comes at a cost of men and servicewomen coming back with their limbs blown off, all in the name of politicians that want to get elected or reelected.
Right. So let's move on to the economy, because that's one of the biggest issues, obviously, that is concerning young voters, at least young Latino voters that are our readers. Looking at your three proposals of cutting spending, cutting taxes, and reducing federal involvement in the economy, we're hearing both the major candidates saying, we're going to create jobs in the economy. What's your take on all this, both in the perspective of your position and also in the perspective of what's going on in Washington now?
Well, I think that crony capitalism is alive and well in this country. That loopholes are for sale. Both parties are selling the loopholes, and individuals, groups, and corporations are buying the loopholes. Look, let's blow up the entire system. Let's eliminate corporate tax. Let's eliminate income tax. Let's abolish the IRS and replace all of that with one federal consumption tax. In this case, I'm embracing the fair tax. I think it's really the answer when it comes to American exports, making American exports 23% more competitive. It's the answer to China. I think it's really the answer to jobs, because in a zero corporate tax rate environment, if the private sector doesn't create tens of millions of jobs, what does it take to create tens of millions of jobs? I see manufacturing jobs flocking back to the United States in a zero corporate tax rate environment. Great.
Well, I have three more questions, Governor Johnson, and one of the biggest ones has to do with immigration. Recently, you called, at least from what I've read in a recent interview, that the immigration platform or the immigration rhetoric of the GOP was racist. Can you say more about that, and also what looking at your immigration policy and why it seems a little bit more reasonable? Because I think this is one that is near and dear to a lot of young Latino voters.
Well, first of all, I think there needs to be a pound on top of the table recognition that immigration is a good thing. That when it comes to workers, we're getting the cream of the crop when it comes to workers from other countries. Let's start with that. Then secondly, let's make it as easy as possible for someone that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. I'm not talking about a green card here. I'm not talking about citizenship. I'm just talking about a work visa that, in my opinion, would entail a background check and a Social Security card. Now, taxes will not be an issue at all if we will enact the fair tax, because whether you're an illegal immigrant, legal immigrant, visitor to the United States, U.S. citizen, no one is going to avoid being able to pay one federal consumption tax. But then back to immigration. For the 11 million illegal immigrants that are here in this country right now, let's not break families up. Let's set up a grace period where everyone can become documented with a work visa, and that's assuming that you don't have a criminal background. And I think so much of what our sense of immigration and is it good or bad is being driven by border violence. And no one seems to want to address the border violence for its root cause, and that's the prohibition of drugs. So legalize marijuana, and arguably 75% of the border violence with Mexico goes away. Don't build a fence. What an incredible waste of time and money.
So to say more, in your policy, it seems like there's a little bit more rationality in terms of what you just said about the drug trade between Mexico and the how it seems from what you say and what you believe in is that the problem is not just a Mexican drug problem. It's a classic case of supply and demand. And would you agree that is, being a border governor, that you've seen it sort of firsthand, sort of the consequences of how we've legalized that type of drug trade?
No, you've hit it right on the head. I maintain that 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related. That is not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that should be the focus. So, in this case, these are disputes that are being played out with guns rather than the court. 40,000 deaths south of the border over the last 4 years. If we can't connect the dots between drug prohibition and violence, I don't know if we ever will be able to.
Right. And it seems to be that that's one clear difference between you and, say, Governor Romney.
Well,
would you agree?
I do, and I think there are a bunch of differences between myself and the other two guys. I don't want to bomb Iran. I would get out of Afghanistan tomorrow, bring the troops home. I really believe marriage equality is a constitutionally guaranteed right. I would repeal the Patriot Act. I would have never signed the National Defense Authorization Act, allowing for you and I to be arrested and detained without being charged. I'd like to end the drug war. I want to balance the federal budget. I want to throw out income tax, the corporate tax. I want to abolish the IRS, create a level playing field where all of us, I think, can prosper.
So 2 more questions, Governor Johnson, and then we'll wrap this up. What about the critics who say that voting for you is a quote-unquote wasted vote? Because that's something that we hear from a lot of people saying, well, voting for a third party, you're just protesting the 2 parties. What is wrong with that thinking?
Well, a wasted vote is voting for somebody you don't believe in. A wasted vote is voting for the lesser of 2 evils.
Right.
You still end up with the lesser of 2 evils. Voting for the person that you most believe in, and by that's a combination too. Not only do you have to vote for somebody that believes the same things that you do, but you got to vote for somebody that you think would actually go out and doggedly pursue what they're talking about. Julio, I want to suggest that I have a resume to suggest that I'm going to doggedly pursue this. And how do you change the world? Well, you vote for who you believe in. That's how you change the world.
Right. So how has the campaign been going, and where will it go next? And where can voters learn more about you, and just tell us a little bit more of how the next 2 months are going to play out for you?
Well, GaryJohnson2012.com. I would love for you to check out the website. Right now, just as of the last several days, it's being reported by the national media that I'm at 5% of the national vote. That's being reported for the first time. I think for anybody seeing that news for the first time, I think that the overwhelming reaction is, well, who the hell is Gary Johnson? Well, that's a good thing, because checking it out, getting online, GaryJohnson2012.com, will show you a person that in their entire lifetime has been devoted to pursuing the things that he has been talking about. And that has been my life. Julio, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I ran and was elected governor of New Mexico as a Republican in a state that's 2-to-1 Democrat. I made a name for myself vetoing legislation. I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. And so that meant billions of dollars worth of spending that didn't take place. It meant saying no to a whole lot of laws that, in my opinion, were just going to add time and money to our lives, having to comply with these new laws. And they weren't going to make us any safer. They weren't going to make us any more healthy. They were just going to take up more time and more money on the part of all of us.
Well, thank you very much, Governor Johnson, for your time. We really, really appreciate it, and we hope you have a great day.
Great. Thank you very much. Great being on.
Have a great one.